This question from Sammy on email. What went wrong for José Mourinho at Fenerbahçe, Andy?
We've got more than one question on this episode of Ask OTC, haven't we?
Yeah, but we've got time for you to answer that question.
That could do a full pod on this. I'm happy.
Yeah,
I'm ready to
there's
go.
no question.
Let's redo the question. What went right for José Mourinho at Fenerbahçe?
Well, what went right for Fenerbahçe is a branding opportunity, which, as we said, I think when we went back and when Lars and I went to Istanbul in January, you sort of started asking yourself, and we started asking ourselves at that point, was there ever really a football element to José Mourinho coming across? Because really, as we've said before, and as we said on OTC Socials last week, he was replacing coach in Ismail Kartal, who got 99 points in the Turkish Super League the season before. So I understand he didn't win the league. There was no sporting reason really to fire him. And you bring in Mourinho, and all of a sudden, all Fenerbahçe's complaints about refereeing, about the Turkish Association, all those sort of things, when Mourinho speaks about them, they become world news. They're not just Turkish news. So in terms of that, in terms of getting Fenerbahçe out there as a brand, it's all really important. I know we talk more and more about player transfers, like starting, I guess, with the big one of relatively recent times, Cristiano Ronaldo going to Juventus. You know, was he ever the piece to push him over the top of the Champions League? Or was he, as Nicky Bandini has sat in these chairs and said about Facebook impressions and Instagram followers and all that sort of thing, because that counts in terms of commercial and advertising so much these days. I mean, I think what was the most irritating thing from Fenerbahçe fans' point of view, and they were facing, and the whole time he was there, an excellent Galatasaray, even if he had trouble admitting that. But I think when you look at the players they brought in, on the salaries that they brought in, there are a few excuses. And I felt as time went by, Fenerbahçe fans, and I know you had some experience speaking to some of them in Istanbul about this, Lars, that they felt that it was just a list of excuses from Mourinho, certainly the stadium going Fenerbahçe fans, because they got all these cool players. And then was there really the bravery to go and win the biggest games? I mean, really, it finishes. The bit that he gets binned is where they go out of the Champions League to Benfica, one shot on target in a game that they have to try and win to get into the Champions League. And Mourinho can sit there until he's blue in the face going, oh, Benfica are a huge club. And, they're a real Champions League scale club. And we're only a Europa League scale club. If I was a Fenerbahçe fan, I would be fuming. You don't see Benfica offering to pay all of John Duran's Saudi wages, do you? And that really is the issue, Lars. You go back, and it's not a new issue with Mourinho, obviously, but having the bravery to go and win the big games with your big players.
Yeah, having any bravery at all, really, because that was the thing that the thing you're referring to. I had a very amusing encounter with a taxi driver. It's such a cliche, like football journalist goes to another country, speaks to taxi driver. It's the tale as old as time. But like we were getting a taxi back from having been to a Fenerbahçe game, and through the medium of Google Translate, I kind of had a, this is how you do it. You speak into your phone and the Google translates it. And my cab driver said he was a former Fenerbahçe season ticket holder who had given up his seat because of Mourinho, because after Mourinho came in, the football was so defensive, and in his words, or in the words of the Google Translate thing, he is making us play like cowards. And this is, you can't do this. Like, I understand the branding side of it, but you're replacing a guy who took 99 points, and imagine being sacked after taking 99 points, by the way. That's a heck of a thing. And you're not able to, you can maybe accept, generally speaking, I think Turkish football is a place where defensive football is not generally accepted anyway. I think if you're coaching one of the big Istanbul clubs, you really do need to entertain the crowd, and that's sort of the passion they generate. You have to play to it a little bit. But even if you're going to do the Mourinho thing and just be a little bit stodgy and defensive, you at least need to overhaul, I think, Galatasaray to get away with that. And he was never anywhere near that. And of course, yeah, maybe Galatasaray are too strong right now for them to realistically overtake them. But you got to contribute something. Like, he made the team worse in terms of points. He made them less fun to watch. And like you say, it's always excuses with him. So the only way in which it was successful was in terms of getting more global headlines. Well done, but as a coaching thing, it was a failure.
You might want to add that it wasn't just Galatasaray that was his problem. He failed to beat any of the 5 top teams in this Turkish league last season.
What an effort!
Oh my goodness, not one of them.
Whereas Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, on the other hand, became the first Besiktas coach to beat Fenerbahçe and Galatasaray in his debut season, and didn't even last for a full calendar year.
There you go. That answers your question, Sammy. I think Hussein on Instagram has got a question for you guys. It was quite a goal fest this weekend in Ligue 1, when normally it's quite a low-scoring and binary league. Could this be the start of a new style of football in France?
Well, I guess the temptation is to say yes, because there are a lot of goals. You look particularly at Toulouse 3, PSG 6, Lorient 1, Lille 7. And it's a sort of weekend that we're not used to seeing in Ligue 1. The cliche is still zeros and ones. And I think you look at the way...
Why is that? Do you mind me asking?
Yeah, I guess because PSG dominating the league creates a climate of fear. And before that, you had Lyon dominating the league, which creates a climate of fear. 7 successive titles for them in the not too recent past. So you're talking about 2 teams, obviously increasingly PSG, who have dominated the league. And what this means is, teams go in with a negative mindset, I think, and are afraid to lose. I think because it's quite tough and rigorous and physical as well is another side of it. But what I would say, even though this feels like an unusual weekend, and we can say, well, does this mean that because teams are potentially less well funded? Of course, none of them have been able to count any TV money towards their budgets this season. Does this mean more young players, more open league, etc., etc., etc.? I guess another reason you could say is, particularly with the Toulouse and Lille games, you have teams at either end of the score. So in Lille's case, they're comfortably winning, and in PSG's case, they're comfortably winning. So PSG kind of wind down and let in a couple of goals near the end. Lorient figure, well, we're not going to win this game, roll on next week, and they kind of pack it in with a bit less. And we saw that quite a few times in the Champions League. I do wonder if that's due to like the amount of football that's being played. So rather than us becoming a football society of comebacks, which is notably a key point of the Champions League over the last 5 or 6 years, do we get to a point where teams, and we saw it right from the start of last season's Champions League, where you had Bayern beating Dinamo Zagreb 9-2, you get teams thinking, yeah, we've got another game on Wednesday, we're not going to win this anyway. I wonder if that plays into it. The opposing point to that is that the cliche of Ligue 1 being a binary league is a cliche. Because if you go over the last 30 years, okay, it comes behind the Bundesliga, the Premier League, La Liga, etc., in terms of average goals. If you go to the last couple of years, the number of goals per game goes up quite a lot. So this has actually been happening for a while. So if you go to last season, for example, and you divvy up the goals per game, there are as many goals a game in Ligue 1 as there are in the Premier League, which may be surprising to people. But that is the way it's gone over the last little while.
Cliche. Last for you as well. Cliche.
Yeah. So teams are afraid to lose, but they're not afraid of Toulouse because Toulouse are not very
that
good.
Joke coming like last year, Lars. Anytime this decade was
still good.
It's like being tied to the train tracks and the train is coming, but you can't escape. This is what that joke was. Still, listen. Sometimes the low hanging fruit is very juicy. It's well known. No, but it's funny. It doesn't. Yeah, I was just gonna say it doesn't make sense that it should be a super low scoring league because it consistently churns out like exciting attacking players. So there's it doesn't seem to quite make sense. And I even think like, okay, the strength of PSG has created a climate of fear perhaps, but I also just think you should just turn that on its head and say, all right, none of us are winning the league anytime soon. Might as well have a good time.
Thank you. On that note, let's go to the next question. From Hoggy on Blue Sky. How has Victor Boniface gone from being one of the top-rated strikers in Europe to ending up at Werder Bremen? Lars, do you fancy going for that first?
Well, I think with Boniface, unfortunately for him, the injuries are a huge factor. He would have moved to Milan this summer, except he failed a medical. I believe they actually ran 3 medicals on him, and in the end decided against making the signing. So I'm kind of wondering, maybe the doctors at Werder Bremen are a little bit more like, yeah, whatever. Maybe they're thinking, okay, we're getting a very, very good player, so let's just accept that there's an injury risk. But this, he's still only 24. This is quite remarkable. And at his best, he's an extraordinary player. But he had 2 ACL injuries when he was in Norway. People forget that about Boniface. He went from Nigeria to Norway and played for Bodø Glimt before Bodø Glimt were, the European force that they've become. But that's where he came through. And he actually did. They were super excited about getting him because he's obviously very, very talented, and they could tell that. And he came to Bodø Glimt when he was 18, I believe. And 2 weeks after joining the club, he did his cruciate. He did his ACL after 2 weeks after coming to Europe, to a new country, to a new league. Horrible for him. And obviously he came back, but then he did his ACL again. And I think that's always going to be the concern. If you have a guy who's had 2 ACL injuries, I think the very biggest clubs are going to be nervous. But I think he's a great guy for Werder Bremen to get through the door. But I think it's telling that it's only a loan. I do wonder if, again, having not seen any of the scans, I do wonder if he's one of those players who clubs will be afraid to take a chance on because of the physical thing.
Milan, to me, really mismanaged this really badly. Because, as Lars says, it's not news to anyone that he's done his ACL twice. He's managed to make a couple of moves since then. Leverkusen paid over 20 million euros for him when they signed him. And at his best, as Lars says, there's no doubt he's so good when he's on it.
21 goals in the season before last.
Yeah, that's in all competitions. And look, he is... He's Leverkusen's best striker when he's fit. But there are a couple of things that have happened in the last year. Of course, there was the Saudi move that didn't come off when we go back, 7 months, which he really wanted, which Leverkusen really wanted, and then it turned out he was only ever back up to Ivan Toney. So that's why he didn't go. And then it always looked like they would find somewhere for him this summer. Like I said, though, Milan have, I don't think, handled this brilliantly because they knew that those injuries were there. And then when they're on the brink of making the move, they start to get cold feet. And it's like Lars says, who needs 3 medicals? They're just looking at the same thing again and again and again that they know already because they start to get a little bit jittery. And the reason they get jittery is it's not actually the ACLs. It's the fact that all the other muscle injuries that he's getting post that and that have really blighted his time at Leverkusen. Because like Lars was saying, and like you were saying, when he's good, he's so convincing. So it's easy to forget like what's happened this summer. Go back all the time he's been at Leverkusen. He started 30 league games in 2 seasons. So I can understand why you're thinking twice about paying a lot of money for that, because as they always say in American sports, the best ability is availability. So how much are you going to have him? And for Milan, who don't have a bottomless pot of money, that is a bit of a risk. For Werder Bremen, it's no risk at all because they're getting him for the season. They know they can't buy him. He's a massive upgrade on anything they've got. And if he hits it, he hits it. And of course, he gave this brilliant press conference when he signed where he was being asked, how's your physical condition now? Are you 100% fit? And he put on his surly face and he goes, if I wasn't 100% fit, I'd be in the hospital. Rather than talking to you, which was excellent. But as well, firstly, I want to see him stay fit and hit it. It will be brilliant this season, and it will be hilarious to see him rattle in if he manages to. Like say, if he plays, he'll score 20 league goals for Werder Bremen because he's a super player. But I think also, as Lars has pointed out, we have to tip our hat to him as perhaps the most on the continent player ever. So if you think of it, he's played for Bodo Glimt, Union Saint-Gilloise,
yes,
Leverkusen, and now Werder Bremen. He's the hipster's dream.
He has taken us places we never thought we'd go.
No.
Bodo Glimt. Michelle on Insta asked, why have Napoli been so keen on signing out-of-favour players from the Premier League over the last couple of seasons? And, well, let's give you a roundup of some of those players. Scott McTominay. I don't know if he was so out of favour. I suppose at Manchester United he was. But Romelu Lukaku, Billy Gilmour, a bit unfair maybe, and now Kevin De Bruyne and Rasmus Højlund. Is there something going on there, Lars?
Yeah, I don't quite agree with the out of favour part, but you can also go back to one of the best names in showbiz, Andre Frank Zamboanguissa, who went from Fulham to Napoli and was really, really good for them. I think one of the simple answers to this is Antonio Conte wanted guys that he knows from his time working in England. I mean, that might be one of them. We also saw a bit of that with Tuchel, of course, when he was at Bayern. But I also just think Premier League clubs in general, because they spend so much money, I think there's a bit of waste that ends up happening. There's an element of, if we have a player who doesn't quite fit what we want to do, just buy someone else. So you end up with players who are, instead of looking at what you have at your disposal and thinking, how can we make the best out of this, they will just buy someone and chuck someone else away. So I think if you can get there on salary, there's probably I think buying cast-offs from the Premier League can be quite good, actually, because there's a lot of teams in England who will see the hot new thing from a league outside of England, and then they bring him in, and if he doesn't quite work the first season, they just whatever, he wasn't any good, and that's often just not the case. I think specifically with Napoli, I think Antonio Conte, Scott McTominay going to Napoli and becoming like a goal-scoring sensation is one of the best stories in football over the last few years. It's so good, it's so funny, but it also goes to Antonio Conte being just an absolute genius at seeing specifically what he needs for his system and specifically what qualities a player has. Because you'll recall, if we go through Antonio Conte's greatest hits, I mean, he did win the league at Chelsea with Victor Moses as a wing-back, which is like, what now? But he just, but he had exactly whatever Victor Moses is and isn't as a footballer. He had some qualities that Conte thought, you are perfect for what I want you to do in my system. And I guess he saw that with McTominay as well. Maybe he saw McTominay score a few goals for Scotland in a slightly more advanced role and thought, I can make this work. So this is like Conte. You take the good with the bad, and the bad, of course, is that he's extremely temperamental, sulky. He can throw his own club under the bus when it doesn't go his way. All the stuff that Spurs fans in particular will be very familiar with. But he is a genius when it comes to this sort of stuff, and so I think it's a little bit of that. I also think what McTominay has been praised for a lot at Napoli is the attitude that he brings and the sort of the spirit, the professionalism and the spirit and intensity, and I do think that is something. A lot of players from, certainly the reputation of players from the British Isles is that they're hardworking and that they're quite serious about what they do. Whether that's true or not, but I think that's a perception.
And
certainly,
I suppose Lars has brought up something, and Michelle was very, very clear. I think she worded her question really well, signing out of favour players, but really, these players have shone when they've left these shores and gone overseas, not least in Napoli. Scott McTominay being a perfect example.
I mean, she said out of favour. She hasn't said not any good.
Exactly.
I think that's a really important point to make, especially as Lars says. There's maybe not the need or desire to persevere with players who aren't producing with you in the Premier League. But it's not just Napoli. You go back for some years now. Chris Smalling. Lukaku the first time when Conte picked him up at Inter, Ashley Young, there were so many there. If you look at this summer, I mean, not only Højlund, and technically De Bruyne is out of favour despite being a club legend because Man City told him they didn't want him anymore. So I think that point holds. Like others could have ended up there as well. Jadon Sancho, Roma, Juventus were interested in him at one point as well. So it is just a case really of basically all the other leagues have to wait, as we've seen in this transfer window, for the Premier League to do their business and then pick up the scraps. But the scraps that are there in the first place, the players that they don't want anymore, there's always an opportunity. And of course, from the club's perspective, if they're loaning someone there, there's a great opportunity to regenerate the value of that player by putting him on a stage where he can excel.
Yeah, those scraps have fed thousands in the past.
They have.
Yeah, so I'd always have a bag full for myself just in case. Randall on email, though, asked, how on earth did Dutch minnows Telstar embarrass current champions PSV 2-0? Andy, please tell us, how on earth did they do that?
It's amazing. It's just such an amazing story. So you're talking about a club that was finished 7th in the second tier in the Netherlands last season, were promoted in the playoff final against all the odds against Willem II, who were the big favourites to go up, who off the back of that lost their top scorer, Yusuf Al-Kachari, who went to get a better deal at NEC Nijmegen, and you can't really criticise him for that. And they show up and they beat a really good PSV team in Eindhoven on the second weekend. So to put this into some sort of perspective, they're from a village of 5,000 people. They have a tiny ground. They had to appoint a full-time press officer for the first time this summer to comply with Eredivisie rules. Wow. Yeah. And here they go. They turn up, and they didn't steal this. Obviously, PSV had more chances. Interestingly, the Telstar goalkeeper had an excellent game, Ronald Koeman Jr., which is another beautiful...
Why does that make us all smile?
It's a beautiful little twist to it as well. But having Telstar in the top flight after nearly like half a century, look, no one's saying they're going to do Union Saint-Gilloise, but it's just a beautiful, beautiful story for the moment, especially with one of those leagues that tends to be dominated by the three biggest clubs.
You see, Lars, it's not all grim in Grimsby.
It's not. Who's the coach of PSV? Peter Bosz. So, I mean...
We're being nice to him this season. Did you not get my memo?
Yeah, I know. It's just, it's not... It is. You have to chuckle a little bit that it's, of all people, who oversees this catastrophe against this little team. It's Peter Bosz. Come on,
I would love to know how hard Ronald Koeman Jr. kicks the ball. I know he's a goalie. I know. You've got to find out. We've got to know.
I just want to know if when Tyrone Owusu scored the brilliant opening goal where he sort of flipped around and smashed it in the top corner from outside the box, did Owusu go up to the bench and go, Bosh? That's the question, isn't it?
Very good. Game of the week time, gentlemen. So at this point of our conversation, each week our experts recommend a game for you to watch at the weekend. And just as importantly, they also suggest the food you should have with it, halftime or otherwise. Lars, can we kick off with you, as it were?
Yeah, I was about to say I'm heading to Sweden. I'm not. Sweden are heading to Slovenia. And listen, it's International Week, so we're going full Nordic bias on this. Sweden are interesting because they've only qualified for one out of the last 4 World Cups, I believe, and they weren't at the last Euro. So it's not been an amazing period for the Swedish national team. But of course now they can, I mean, unfortunately Kulusevski is now injured for a long period, but they can field a team with Alexander Isak and Victor Gyökeres up front, which is a reasonable strike pairing, you would have to say. And in time, when he gets fit again, Kulusevski should join them, and that should form just a really scary front three, really, if they can get the balance right. They're coached by Jon Dahl Tomasson, the former, of course, the Danish sort of striking legend. They have been playing recently in sort of a 3-5-2, which I guess part of the reason you do that is that you'd like to have a formation where you can feasibly play 2 centre forwards so that you can use both Isak and Gyökeres in their best position. They're in a qualifying group. They won their Nations League group, so they're going to get some kind of playoff anyway here, pretty much guaranteed. But they're in the qualifying group with Switzerland, Slovenia, and Kosovo, and I think they will feel that's a real opportunity to topping a group. With all due respect to Switzerland, it's of course the Sweden-Switzerland games that will be the deciders in this group, but Slovenia away is one of those games. Slovenia away, you should win, but it's possible to screw that up. But if you're looking to finish above Switzerland in this group, it's really important that you don't screw that up. So it's a low-key important game for Sweden in their quest to get to the World Cup.
And does he feature in that 5 in the middle?
You'd hope so. I mean, he hasn't. I don't believe he's been a regular with them, but that is another would be fun. I'd actually be tempted to play him because one of the things that they can do. I mean, the thing about this 3-5-2 formation is that you can flip the V, as it were, with that midfield. You can either have 2 slightly more defensive and 1 more attacking player, or you can have 1 sort of holder and 2 number 8s, as you might say. It would be interesting to see. It would be very interesting to see Bergvall being given some attacking freedom to make, because he's very good at running with the ball and that sort of stuff. But I would expect to see Hugo Larsson and maybe Ayari of Brighton start in midfield.
Golden generation for Sweden. I'm really optimistic. But what should we eat with that? And be careful. You know how I know my Swedish food. If you're going Swedish, make sure it's on point.
Yeah. Yeah, listen. Let's not. I always pick fish, don't I? But let's just. I'm not going to say surströmming because nobody wants that. But no, let's keep it simple. Let's keep it basic. I've horrified the listeners with many fish-based things in the past, so let's just head to IKEA and get the meatballs.
Yeah, that does work.
It's simple.
That
it works.
Does work. Although the meatballs, lingonsylt, lingon.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah, I like that.
Do we say lingon over here?
Isn't it lingonberry?
Oh, is it lingonberry? Oh, yeah. I didn't know. Just asking a question, man.
Yeah.
I thought it was Yultron, but let's go for the lingonberries.
I bought myself a whole bank of drawers while I've been waiting for you to decide whether lingonberry's lingonberry.
Yeah, you should try other furniture shops, maybe. Yeah. Okay, that's what we're having. And that is Sweden versus Slovenia. It's today at 7:45 p.m. Andy?
I've gone for Sunday night. Turkey versus Spain, of course I have. Oh, this is going to be really good. Start of this World Cup group. Turkey can try and get themselves off to a fly with their second most difficult game. Of course, the most difficult game being Spain away. But I think Vincenzo Montella has changed the whole atmosphere really around the Turkish national team. And there've been some, I guess, a turbulent transfer period for a lot of those players. So, of course, we talked about Çakır in the main show, the goalkeeper who's just joined Galatasaray, which is huge. Barış, who's been fantastic for Galatasaray, who was certainly edging himself in the direction of a move to Saudi Arabia that didn't quite come off in the end. So he's been in and out of training and not been in the team. So that's been a little bit difficult for him. And then the fact that Arda Güler is playing all the time for Real Madrid.
My favourite midfielder.
I know he's your favourite. So that's good. And, of course, you've got Can Uzun, who's just appearing and emerging at Eintracht Frankfurt. He's had a brilliant start to the season. Maybe he could be the centre forward that they've really needed for a while. And, of course, Spain on the other side of it. So I'm thinking it's going to be a fantastic game. In terms of food, the go-to, it's got to be kuzu shish. There's no doubt about that.
You're not getting Spanish?
So no. Come on. We're in Turkey. So we're going for kuzu shish. That's lamb cooked over the fire pit with an incredibly fresh and various salad. You're going to have a great time. And maybe a bit of baklava on the side.
Now you've got me listening.
There we go.
Thank you very much. Got there in the end. And thank you both of you for your recommendations. I think we're going to have a cracking one. That game, Turkey versus Spain, it's on Sunday at 7:45 p.m. Thank you for listening to Ask OTC. And if you'd like to ask a question, you can contact us at any time at Radio Dotun, at Andy Brassel, or at Lars Severston. And you can email us, otc@footballramble.com.